On a dusty, bumpy country road, a young pregnant woman was barely walking. She was huffing and puffing, one hand supporting her huge belly and the other rolling a large wheeled travel bag. Sweat was dripping down her face, her hair was sticking to her body. Tiffany didn't want to do anything else, and it was still a long walk to Grandpa's house. She leaned against a leaning fence, breathing heavily as if she'd run a marathon. The sun was scorching mercilessly, and she wanted only one thing: to fall directly on the damp ground and not get up. Suddenly she heard the noise of an engine from behind, and an old wazik pulled up beside her. The driver's door opened, and the man waved at her. "Sit down. I'll give you a ride to where you need it. Why did you decide to take a trip in your condition? In this heat?" It was Uncle Fred, an elderly farmer, who looked at the traveler and suddenly slapped himself on the forehead, taking off his cap. "Tiffany, are you? That's right. I didn't recognize you at first. What the hell are you doing? Married? When did you get married? It's only been a year since you left. You went to visit? To your homeland?" He peppered Tiffany with questions, and she felt so sick to her stomach that she didn't want to answer them, but she had to. "Hello, Uncle Fred. Yeah, I thought I'd come home. For good. I don't have a husband. It's a long story. Can you give me a ride to my grandfather's house? I can hardly waddle, my stomach won't let me." The man scratched the back of his head and shook his head. "Yes. Well, what's up? And how will you be there alone? You're probably going to give birth soon, judging by your belly. And our women will eat you alive. They will wash all your bones." The woman sighed heavily. "I know, Uncle Fred, but what can I do? I'll survive somehow. I have nowhere else to go. I'll register here at the paramedic station. I'll get used to it." The man drove her home and waved goodbye. "So long, Tiffany. Settle in. If you need any help, just whistle. We'll help you in a neighborly way." Surprisingly, the rusty-looking lock gave in easily, and Tiffany entered the house. Dropping her suitcase in the hallway, she sat down on the edge of the couch in her room. She looked around. Everything was just as it had been when her beloved grandfather was alive. There was a portrait of her and her grandmother on the wall, a horseshoe ornament above the door, an old coverlet embroidered by her grandmother's hand. And everywhere was so dusty, it would take a week to clean. And such a longing came over the woman. Tears rolled from her eyes, and an avalanche of memories of her youth and recent days, all mixed up. Tiffany's parents had died very young, when she was only 8. They both worked on the farm, her mother in the greenhouse, her father as a cattleman, and they lived friendly, though not richly, with their own vegetable garden and small farm. But a ridiculous and terrible tragedy killed a lot of people. The old wiring on the farm shorted out. The fire quickly spread in the hot summer wind, enveloping from all sides a handful of frightened people. The chances of survival were slim to none. The asphyxiation from the fumes had done its work. So 8-year-old Tiffany became an orphan overnight. She was raised by her grandparents, replacing both her father and mother. The girl was very sad for her parents. She missed her mother's affection and love and her father's care. The house immediately became empty, orphaned. But the grandmother, unable to withstand such grief, soon went down with blood pressure and heart, and a month later she was gone. So the girl had only one most dear and close person left, her beloved grandfather Peter. He did not like calf tenderness, was strict, but in his heart very much loved his granddaughter, only raised her as he knew how, as if she was a boy. He taught her how to handle a hunting rifle, cut grass, saw and chop wood. The girl dashingly rode a horse and could even hammer her own nails. Tiffany loved her grandfather, tried to obey, but still secretly dreamed of only one thing: to go to the city. That's what almost all young people did. Rarely did anyone consciously stay in the village. There was only one way to go, either to be a milkmaid or a pig farmer. And Tiffany wanted to see how the townspeople lived. On TV showed cozy apartments with amenities, theaters, entertainment. It was so enticing. It seemed unbearable to her to live her whole life in the village, hopeless. But when Tiffany immediately after the school graduation began to pack and persuade her grandfather to let her go, he was terribly angry, stomped his feet and shouted, "Where are you going, Tiffany? What town? What are you doing there? You need to go to school, get some kind of profession. You'd better go to the district center, you'll finish the cooking course there, maybe I'll put you in our canteen. You'll always be fed, and the work is easier than on a farm." And then we'll find you a good fiancé. You'll get married like everyone else. What's wrong with that? But Tiffany persisted. Grandpa, don't swear. Let me go. I'm an adult, and I'm going to work in the capital. I'll find a fiancé there, a city man. I don't need country folk. I want to live like a white man. You'll see. Everything will be fine. I don't want to stay in the village. You'll understand. Peter was furious. I'm going to take a rod and whip you. Who needs you there, you fool? Where will you go to work? And if you start twiddling your heel and doing obscene things, you're no longer my granddaughter. Fuck you. If your mother were alive, God rest her soul, she would have talked you out of it and put you in your place. How can you not understand, silly, that in the village the land itself feeds you? Just don't be lazy. Work. And what's in the city? Vanity and debauchery. What can I say to you? You're just like your father. Do what you want. Tiffany still didn't listen to her grandfather and left. He gave her all the money she needed for the trip, but he was still very upset with her. He hoped that his granddaughter would stay, be his helper, start a family, give birth to children, and they would live close to each other. But it didn't turn out the way he wanted. The capital dumbfounded Tiffany, stunned. It was like a huge anthill, where everyone was scurrying back and forth. No one paid any attention to anyone. Cars flew at a terrible speed, and supermarkets beckoned with beautiful windows. The girl felt as if she was in another world and was marveling all the time. Well, how could it compare with her village, where everyone knows everything about each other, one store for the whole neighborhood, and from entertainment only a club on weekends? The girl was determined to settle in the capital for a long time, not to disgrace her grandfather, and to live according to her conscience. So immediately after her arrival, she rented a room on the outskirts. In the next room lived the owner herself, an elderly grandmother. She meticulously examined the new tenant and strictly instructed her, "See me, girl. Do not bring fiancés here. Do not make noise late at night and behave yourself. Otherwise, I'll find another tenant in no time." Tiffany decided to placate her grandmother and handed her a jar of pickled mushrooms. "Oh no, Mary. My grandfather raised me and he's strict. You know how strict he is? He wouldn't even let me stay out late. So don't worry. I didn't come here to have fun, but to work and organize my life." The old woman smiled peacefully. "Oh, thank you for the hospitality. Well then, let's go to the kitchen. I have just boiled potatoes. We'll have dinner." "Yes, I can see that you are not spoiled yet, but city life changes everyone, so I warn you just in case." Tiffany settled in and started looking for a job. And that's where she ran into trouble. She didn't want to be a waitress. She had to work at night, and her landlady made it clear to her that she shouldn't wander around at night. She was also afraid to get involved with money, in case she counted and then they would hang the shortage on her. So she went to work as a cleaner in a small private company. The schedule was convenient, from 8 to 5. It suited her. And being a naive girl, she decided that she would just look around, and maybe she would be transferred to a better position later. Tiffany was given a nice uniform, and she began her duties. All the equipment was modern, and the work was not hard, as all the rooms were laminate and tiled. The girl looked enviously at the young women of her age, who worked on the keyboard with manicured fingers, and chirped about fitness clubs and new clothes, and dreamed that she would save up some money and go to school. She wasn't going to spend the rest of her life scrubbing floors. Tiffany had a very attractive appearance, a searing, bright brunette with black eyebrows and long curled eyelashes, brown eyes, and a charming smile. And she liked to socialize, so she quickly joined the team. She was not bullied, on the contrary, praised for her efforts, and called the fairy of cleanliness, trying not to use the offensive word cleaner. Especially the head of purchasing, a young guy named Carl, hovered around Tiffany. He complimented her and explicitly hinted at a meeting. But Tiffany didn't like him at all. He was slippery, his eyes kept running, and his dirty jokes only irritated her. But she still did not dare to refuse him openly. It was not reasonable to spoil the relationship from the beginning, so she gave him softly and in a joking way, turn away. Only the man was very angry, and took her refusal as a personal offense. How is it that some cleaning lady and dared to refuse? The director of the company, Sean, also observed and knew all this, but did not take it seriously, let it pass by his ears. His subordinate is having fun and all right, especially since the owner of the company had bigger problems, because the income recently began to fall, although there was no apparent reason for this. Carl was not his crony. They just studied at the same faculty, often crossed paths, but they were too different in nature. If Sean was always calm, sedate, then Carl is a walker. Even that, not a single skirt did not miss since his student years, and it was also said that he liked to lose money in the casino and at the races. Nevertheless, he was a good specialist, able to buy cheap, sell expensive. And when he asked Sean for a job, he took it without a word. The business the current owner inherited from his father, a small but firmly on its feet company, Orion, was engaged in the development and sale of software and even computer equipment. They had a team of young and promising specialists who could create their own original product. Sean, like his father, loved his business, managed competently, tried to encourage employees for creativity and new developments, and paid a decent salary. That's why he didn't understand why the company's income started to fall over the last month. What is going wrong? The man has not yet begun to inform his father about the problems. They were not yet critical. He wanted to figure it out himself. Not for nothing he graduated from the Faculty of Economics. Once, in honor of the new year, the director decided to organize a corporate party, ordered a restaurant and invited absolutely everyone, starting from the bosses and ending with the guards and janitor. He was such a man, though he had money, but he did not divide people into rich and poor. That's a rare thing to find these days. Tiffany was very happy because she was afraid to go out alone in the evenings, and she had not made any friends yet. And now she was going to have such a celebration. But she had nothing to wear. She had to spend a lot of money and buy a new dress. Her niece Mary gave her a nice perm and lent her some pretty stiletto shoes. When Tiffany walked into the restaurant and took off her old coat, changed her shoes and walked out into the room, everyone gasped. Such a slim beauty, all blooming, fresh. The colleagues were used to seeing Tiffany in her uniform, and now they were admiring the girl. The director couldn't even look away, and Carl immediately sat up and began to hit on Tiffany again. But the girl again evaded his advances, but agreed to dance a slow dance with the principal. It was so wonderful. The lights of the disco, the music was flowing, and they were spinning. Tiffany's heart was ready to jump from the happiness that came over her at once. She liked Sean madly, but she had never dreamed of him. Who was she, and who was he? And now Sean was looking at her so much, intently, warmly. Her legs even shook. When everyone started to go home, the principal suddenly proposed, "I'm going to Old Town. If you're on your way, sit down. I'll give you a ride." Several colleagues got into the car, and Tiffany was among them. It was just in her neighborhood. She was glad. She wouldn't have to call an expensive cab. After all, it was dangerous to stomp home by herself in the middle of the night. Sean was dropping off his co-workers one by one, and it just so happened that Tiffany was the last of the co-workers. Everyone else had already left. She timidly said, "Stop me here. Here we go. Thank you so much for the ride, Sean." The director walked around the car, opened the door, helped the lady out, and was in no hurry to let go of her hands. Their gazes met, and both of them immediately realized that they were missing. It was as if a spark ran between them. Sean began to speak softly to her. "Sweet Tiffany, sweetheart, after dancing with you I can't get over it. I'm crazy about you. I fell in love with you like a schoolboy, it's funny. Tell me, do you like me? Would you like to meet again? Just the two of us? Just you and me?" Tiffany's throat was dry. Her heart was pounding like crazy, and she wanted to scream at the world, "Stupid! I'm dreaming about it!" But she only nodded quietly and looked at him so much that everything became clear without words. The couple began to kiss passionately without conspiring on a hunch, and both flew to the seventh heaven from happiness. Since that evening they began to meet secretly. At work they still observed the chain of command, and in the evenings they burned with love and passion, and of course the naive Tiffany decided that this was her only love, the prince she had dreamed of since childhood. She immediately forgot her grandfather's words and basked in her love. But you can't hide a bag, and soon rumors spread in the team that the owner is dipping the cleaning lady. Many began to envy her and frankly did not understand what the director found in her so. The usual village simpleton, except for the smarmy. No one took their romance seriously. Everyone understood. The chief is just having fun. Will soon enjoy himself and leave the fool. After all, it is clear as daylight that between them nothing in common cannot be. Especially fierce Carl, he began to hate this impudent girl, who refused him in public, but to Sean in bed immediately jumped. And he decided to take revenge on her so that she wouldn't get in trouble and she'd know her place, you bum. But all this talk didn't seem to affect the lovers. Tiffany was in the clouds. She loved her beloved and hoped for a quick wedding. And Sean himself at first did not plan to have a serious relationship. So, a light flirtation, no more. But he didn't notice how he got carried away and fell in love, so much so that he couldn't live a day without his Tiffany. She was extraordinary, so easy, cheerful, demanded nothing from him but love. They were really good together. Well, the fact that Tiffany is a simple cleaner, Sean did not care. He decided that after marriage his wife will sit at home, keep the home hearth. But the head of procurement did not think so, and began to deliberately build intrigues young people to break up their union. First, he put Tiffany in a bag of important documents and created a scandal, inciting the guard to examine her with scrutiny. The girl was called on the carpet, scolded for decency, but Sean hushed the matter up and decided that it was some kind of misunderstanding. Why would Tiffany need a contract? What's she going to do with them? It's ridiculous. She doesn't know anything about computer development. She can't even sell it wisely. But Carl wasn't laughing, so he took countermeasures. He met with Sean's father, Ben, a powerful businessman. He was very surprised by Carl's visit. Well, hello, Carl. What are you doing here? Did you decide to visit the old man? Or has something happened? I've been keeping my nose out of my son's business lately. I've relaxed at last. The man said bilefully, It's too bad that you've gone out of business, because the situation at the firm is getting worse. I can't get through to Sean. He can't hear me. He's hanging around with that whore, our new cleaning lady. He's even going to marry her, for crying out loud. I don't care about my job. My income is down. I don't know what to do. I wanted to ask you guys for advice. Maybe you can influence Sean somehow? The elderly businessman frowned. What's going on there? Tell me everything in detail. The joyful Carl immediately told everything in colors, rubbing his hands together. Now his father had made Sean dump Tiffany. That's right. It's the right thing to do. The angry Ben rushed back to the company after his conversation with the employee and confronted his son, saying, Son, are you out of your mind? Why do you need this washerwoman? Or are there no more normal girls? Well, stop with your little flings and get your head on straight. I've been going over the reports and the profits are flat. What's the matter? Sean took offense too and stood up to me. Don't you dare call Tiffany a maid. She's wonderful. We're getting married and she's not going to be a cleaning lady anymore. She's going to be my wife. I hope she gives you grandchildren. I know there's been some difficulties at the firm and I'm trying to sort it out. Don't worry, I'll try to sort it out. Or don't you trust me anymore? I don't get it. You don't have to tell me off like a schoolboy. I'm a grown-up, Dad, and I'm entitled to my own opinion and my own life. Ben hoped that his son would listen to his words, but it didn't happen. The couple was still dating and preparing for the celebration. Not only that, but the girl was already pregnant. She was now living at Sean's mansion as a landlady and not working. Ben was angry and resentful. He thought this beggar was a hustler, who had come from nowhere and was already the wife of a businessman. No, he couldn't let that happen. Not the kind of daughter-in-law he wanted. And then Carl volunteered to help. Together they figured out how to separate the couple forever. But the cunning employee went even further, and secretly sold their developments to competitors, and it hurt the image and wallet of the company, and now they were definitely broke. All these troubles forced the couple to postpone preparations for the wedding. But soon another disaster struck Tiffany. A neighbor from the village called and said that her grandfather died suddenly. It was necessary to go to the funeral. The girl sobbed, for they had not seen each other since she had left for the capital. She felt her own guilt in the death of her grandfather. He was obviously worried about her departure, so he gave up, got sick. Sean also felt the situation, gave Tiffany money for the funeral, paid for everything. But he could not go himself, because the clouds in the company thickened further than ever. After the funeral, Tiffany returned to the city feeling down and sad. She didn't care about anything, and she had a terrible toxemia, so sick of everything. I thought Sean would be happy about the baby, but when he found out that there would be 3 of them at once, his eyes went wide. Triplets? Are you kidding me? We've never had triplets in our family. I'm just in shock. I do not even know whether to rejoice or cry at such news." This strange reaction of the groom alerted the girl. She became uncomfortable, and his ardor for her somehow once cooled. It seems that Sean did not expect such consequences. Plus, in the firm things were going worse and worse. His father was furious and soon handed over the reins to Carl. And the son called the whipping boy, and Tuty, they say, soft he is soft and does not know how to lead. All these scandals completely shook Sean's psyche. He became twitchy and angry. He and Tiffany began to often quarrel even on small things. He looked at her growing belly with horror rather than awe, and could not imagine what he would do with 3 children at once. But that was not all the grief that came over Tiffany. If she had only known what a trap the vindictive Carl had set for her. Tiffany consoled herself as best she could, braced herself, tried to smooth out the sharp edges and hoped that all these troubles were temporary. The most important thing was that she and Sean loved each other, and therefore they would overcome everything. What kind of family is smooth sailing? That evening she was busy in the kitchen, waiting for Sean from work, making dumplings with cherries as he liked, and setting the table. She dreamily rubbed her huge belly and talked to the kids. "Soon my little puppies will be born, and then we'll have a wedding. And now our daddy really has a lot of problems, no time for fun. And Ben's grandfather will love you as soon as he sees you. Too bad my favorite grandpa didn't live to see his granddaughters. He would have been happy for me. And I love you already, my little ones." Then the key in the lock turned and Sean came into the apartment. He reeked of alcohol. He was furious, his eyes were wide, he'd never seen anything like this before, and Tiffany was scared. "Love, what's wrong? Are you drunk? Is something wrong? You're looking at me like that. Don't scare me, please, I'm even scared." Sean suddenly threw a stack of pictures in her face and yelled, "You're a piece of shit. Take a look. How long have you been giving me horns? You've got kids with him? You don't know that I had mumps as a child. My father says I'm unlikely to have children. Shame on you, Tiffany. I loved you so much. And Carl told me you were two-faced, and you were flirting with him too. And I was a fool not to believe it." The dumbfounded woman looked through the photos and didn't understand a thing. Here she was walking down the street with some strange man. Here she was kissing him. Here she was getting into his car. She shouted hoarsely, "What is this nonsense? It's not me. Do you understand or not? You're the first man I've ever been with, and you're all I have. Why don't you believe me? Look at me. I'm at home 24 hours a day. What men? I don't know who the man in the photo is. Why don't you believe me?" She wanted to hug him, to look into his eyes, but he pushed her away. "Get out of the house, you disgust me. I can't stand the sight of you." Tiffany was so hurt, so hurt. She burst into tears and went to pack her things, but Sean did not stop her, just sat in the kitchen, drinking brandy and waiting for her to slam the front door behind her. The girl hoped to the last that he would come to his senses, that he would stop her, that he would tell her how much he loved her. But he didn't even turn around. So he doesn't care that she's pregnant? That she's got nowhere to go? Doesn't care about her kids? All this did not fit into Tiffany's head and seemed like some kind of wildness, a monstrous mistake. The poor woman, in a fit of emotion, decided to break off all relations with Sean and return to the village and start life from scratch, to raise her children herself. All the way she roared in the train. Tears choked her, and inside everything was swamped with resentment. After all, she was thrown out by her beloved like a dog. It was so terrible. And she loved him so selflessly. She was faithful and never cheated. And only now, sitting on her grandfather's sofa, did Tiffany suddenly realize the horror of her situation. How on earth was she going to live here alone? With 3 kids, no money, no amenities, no baby stuff, no nothing. Not a stroller, not a crib, not a bathtub. No money either. Maybe for a month, maybe even less. And then what? How to raise 3 kids on their feet. "I want to go to the noose." She suddenly looked at her grandfather's portrait and howled. "And you warned me, Grandpa, discouraged me to go to the city as you felt the trouble. And I was a fool not to listen. Grandpa, my dear, if you knew how bad it is for me and you're not around, you would have scolded me for decency and forgiven me, would have helped me, would not have left me in a difficult moment. Why did you go to heaven so early? Why did you leave me? How will I be alone now?" She whispered all this out loud, as if in a delirium, and tears were pouring from her eyes. She was in total despair and did not know how to go on living. Tiffany felt sick, Dizzy and sick to her stomach, she fell sideways on the couch and began to wriggle in pain. She was in a wild panic. Oh my God, has it really started? That's all I need right now. What should I do? Where's my phone? And who do I call? The ambulance will be an hour and a half away for sure. Oh, it hurts so much. Lord, don't leave me in my hour of need. Help me, I beg you. All this she shouted aloud, biting her lips, and then she fainted, then came to her senses for a while. And suddenly she saw someone's silhouette and hands, large, warm, and rough. A pleasant baritone whispered to her, "Don't be afraid, I'll help you. I know how to deliver babies. Let me examine you, please, or I won't be able to help you." Tiffany mumbled, "Who are you? How do you know what to do? I'm dying, aren't I? Or, stay away from me. I won't let you kill my children, don't touch me." She struggled and screamed. She was not herself. She did not understand whether it was a nightmare or reality. Everything merged into one huge ball of pain and suffering. But soon it was not labor, but pushing. And the woman in labor did not care who and what she wanted from her. She was arching her back and screaming. Further, she vaguely remembered everything, as in a delirium. Someone wiped her forehead with cool water, gave her a drink, gave her clear commands, and even hit her cheeks a couple of times, when she was completely insane or lost consciousness. Surprisingly, the woman obeyed them, and soon she heard the long-awaited cry of her babies and again fell into oblivion. Tiffany woke up to someone shoving smelling saline under her nose. She even recoiled and immediately regained consciousness. The mom of many children didn't know how much time had passed. She barely woke up. The paramedics from the ambulance crew were leaning over her. "Woman, can you hear me? We've got a call for an emergency delivery at your address. But it took us a long time to get here. It's a long way to go, and the roads are terrible. I'm sorry. As we can see, everything has happened. You've safely delivered triplets on your own, which is a miracle. The children are fine too. You have 3 girls. Only the weight is a little low, but you lost a lot of blood. But that's not surprising with such a difficult labor. We're going to the hospital now. The doctor will examine you. Tell me, who was able to deliver triplets so professionally? It's a talent. At home, without any equipment and conditions, I would like to shake hands with this hero. Not every experienced OB/GYN can pull this off." Tiffany cradled her babies in her arms and whispered, "I don't know. I don't remember much of anything. I just got here. I hadn't even unpacked yet. And then it started. And then I blacked out, and I didn't remember his face. I don't even understand. How could there be a stranger here? It's my grandfather's old house. No one's ever lived there before. It's a mystery. But I'm very grateful to my Savior. Whoever he was, I would have died alone." The paramedic and the ambulance doctor couldn't believe their eyes. The babies were bathed and wrapped in diapers. The woman in labor was fine too. Who was this hero? Tiffany was taken to the maternity ward in the city. The doctor examined her and confirmed that everything was done very professionally. It is only necessary to lie down with a week, get stronger a little, and watch the children. It's a small wait after all. All week Tiffany was very nervous. Not enough milk, and the babies had to be fed. She rocked her babies, her precious little girls, and cried with joy and grief at the same time. She was tormented by thoughts. How will I go alone from the maternity hospital? You can't carry 3 of them. And how shameful. Alone, without a husband, 3 fattened. I can imagine how they'll look at me. Representatives of the social service even talked to the woman in labor, indirectly insinuating that she could not bear 3 children alone. There was no one to help her, no husband, no relatives. She could keep 1 child and let the rest stay in the baby house for the time being. The women looked at her as if she were crazy, with pity and squeamishness. But Tiffany stood her ground. "I'll take all 3 of them. I can handle it. I've got a house, a vegetable garden, a farm. I'll make a living. I won't abandon my children. I'm a mother, not a cuckoo. Don't look at me like that. Yes, I am a single mother. Yes, with triplets in my arms. But I'm not an alcoholic and not a mess. I love my babies and I'm not giving them away, okay? And don't come to me with such offers anymore." Then the women changed tactics, took pity, and began to tell and explain where Tiffany would need to go to get benefits. As a low-income and single mother, after all, a living penny would come steadily. In desperation, she even thought of calling Sean and telling him that he was already a daddy, that he now had 3 wonderful princesses, Vera, Liuba, and Mila. But she immediately warned herself, "Don't you dare. He abandoned you, threw you out like a rag. If he wanted to return, he would have called long ago. He doesn't need you. You have to get him out of your head, out of your heart, and forget him." The day of her discharge came, and the mayor's office visited her too, and gave her lovely envelopes, diapers, and a stroller for triplets. Tiffany kept stomping around the room. She didn't dare to say that no one was there to greet her. It was so embarrassing and embarrassing. There were tons of cars in the yard, relatives honking their horns, taking pictures of the happy parents. Tiffany timidly stepped out onto the porch, looking around as if searching for someone with her eyes. Suddenly a stranger ran up to her. He was short, laughing, with red hair, dressed plainly, old jeans and a t-shirt. But he's clean. He said to the nurse in a businesslike manner, "I'm for Tiffany. Give me the kids. Tux, come on, honey, what are you standing there for? Are you confused? It's no wonder. I barely made it. I'm sorry. Get in the cab. We gotta go home." He handed her a modest bouquet of peonies, but Tiffany was happy about that too. Now she wasn't stared at. Everyone clapped sincerely, congratulated her, and wished her family happiness. And when they were on their way to the cab, the dazed woman asked, "Thank you, of course, but who are you? We do not know you? Why did you come for me? Who told you to come? Sean? Did he send you?" The man shook his head. "I don't know any Sean. My name is Ethan, and I'm the one who delivered your baby. I'm sorry about that." The house was empty for a long time, and I settled it slowly. I was tired of wandering around. And then you arrived unexpectedly. I got scared and hid, and when it all started, I had no time to think, so I rescued you. Everything seemed to work out. My hands remembered what to do, although I was worried after so many years of break. The woman became embarrassed even, began to thank him from the heart. That's who my savior. Thank you, Ethan, from the bottom of my heart. If it wasn't for you, I would have died there. Are you a doctor? All in the maternity hospital marveled at how professionally done everything, even wanted to shake your hand. How did it happen that such a talent is lost? Ethan sighed and began to tell. The road to the village was still long. Now I am a vagrant, but once I was the only and favorite son in a rich family. My childhood was very happy. My parents cared so much. I was never denied anything. My father was only happy that I became a medic, worked as a doctor in the ambulance. I liked it very much. You know that every day is not in vain, and you saved at least one person from death, helped them to get back on their feet. Then I met Ellie. She's a medic too. She was a nurse at the hospital. I loved her with all my heart. We were getting ready to get married. But then Ellie's parents got sick unexpectedly, and my dad volunteered to drive her himself. I was just on duty. It was blizzarding and icy outside, and the weather was so nasty. This trip was fatal. They skidded at an intersection. My father lost control and hit a pole. They died together in that accident. And my mom couldn't survive it either. She died of a heart attack 3 months later. It was a hell of a funeral and a wake. And I stood at the coffin and did not realize what had happened. My brain refused to believe that Ellie and my parents were gone and would never be. Well, the competitors, as you know, do not slumber, immediately took away the company, like kites swooped, and I found myself as if in a huge trap. So I broke down and started drinking heavily. It was easier for me. It allowed me to calm my mental suffering for a couple of hours and forget myself. I didn't care about anything. I closed my eyes and saw Ellie laughing, my mother calling me to dinner, and my father on his favorite couch reading the newspaper. It was unbearable. I got kicked out of my job and our house was foreclosed on by creditors. That's how I became homeless. I know it's not manly. I had to pull myself together, fight to the end. But I didn't see the point, you know. I lost all my family at once. If at least my father's business had remained, maybe I'd have fought for the sake of his memory. But so, you're not mad at me for taking you out of the hospital? Don't worry. I earned the money for the cab honestly. I chopped and stacked a whole car of chunks for an old lady. I just felt so sorry for you. How could it be? You're alone, and there's labor, and no one around. It shouldn't be like that. I just couldn't stay away because I took the Hippocratic Oath. I didn't touch anything in the house. I didn't steal anything. Don't worry. I just slept there, that's all. Tiffany couldn't stand it and cried, and she didn't notice how she told all about herself, about her scoundrel of a fiancé, and how she too had been thrown out on the street like a naughty kitten. And at the end she added, "You know, Ethan, let's take a personal name. We know each other better than ever. I am not a bit angry, on the contrary, very grateful to you for everything. You are the only one who willed to save my children and me, among others. And I'd be happy if you stayed. Live as long as you want. To be honest, I'm so scared to stay alone with triplets because I need to clean the house and in general I need any help now." So Ethan stayed at Tiffany's. He did not sit idle, fixed the roof, the fence, the furnace, because before he was afraid of publicity and did not touch anything here. He also desperately wanted to help this brave woman who had risked giving birth to 3 children alone. At first the neighbors judged Tiffany, squinting at her, saying that she had arrived with a belly and had given birth to a child from who knows who, shameful. And she'd gotten mixed up with a tramp. But on the contrary, the district officer who visited Tiffany was pleased. He'd known Tiffany since childhood, but he'd had a long talk with Ethan because he was obliged to check newcomers to the village. He looked through the man's documents, asked him what was going on. He didn't lie or twist and told all his life as it was. He had nothing to hide. The policeman made inquiries. Everything matched, and he suggested that Ethan go to the medical station as a paramedic. The old doctor had long since retired, but people needed to be treated somewhere. The man gladly agreed. He felt responsible for Tiffany and the kids, and was very happy that he would be able to support them somehow. In the evenings, Ethan was hard at work in the barn, but Tiffany was so exhausted with the chores and the children that she didn't have time to watch. But when one day he brought 3 charming wooden cradles into the house, she gasped, "Oh my goodness, what a beauty. You've got golden hands. I did it myself, well, wow. Thank you very much. And then I'm all worried that the kids will fall off the couch. You're so good, Ethan. That's lucky for someone such a husband can only dream of." The man was embarrassed. He was pleased with her compliments, warm words, and he suddenly replied, "You know, Tiffany, after the death of Ellie, my life ended, stopped, and in my soul there was a huge black hole, which I could not fill with anything. And now I have you and the kids in my destiny, and I am so glad I did. Let me always be near you, help you. For me it is the best reward. You are the meaning of my life. I now know why to get up in the morning, what I should strive for, and what to do. I know it's embarrassing for you because people say things, but I know you're the best woman in the world." Tiffany confidently replied, "Let them talk. They'll talk, and then they'll stop. The main thing is that we are together. We need each other, and the rest is not so important. I am glad and grateful to fate that you are now with me by my side, and every day I feel your support. It's priceless, believe me." Time passed, and the attitude of the villagers began to change slowly. Now they ran to Ethan for help, some to take their blood pressure, some to give shots, some to treat sciatica. He never refused anyone. If necessary, he got up at night and went to help. In his work, Ethan was a professional, was able to recognize even dangerous diseases, and in time sent villagers to the city for examination. As a token of gratitude, people from the bottom of their hearts brought all sorts of gifts: eggs, honey, or a piece of lard. Many people shared vegetables from the vegetable garden and twists, and Tiffany's life got better little by little. There was something to cook dinner with. They were no longer hungry. A neighbor, Aunt Linda, helped her with her daughters, looked after her often, so that the woman could get some sleep or do chores. A familiar Uncle Fred brought cages and a couple of rabbits for breeding. There was a whole meadow of grass to mow, and Ethan was happy to start farming. He never seemed to tire of it. He enjoyed it all. He had suffered so much in his life that now he enjoyed every day of normal family life in the countryside. He got up in the dark, fed the household, managed, had breakfast, kissed his Tiffany, little chubby sleepy princesses, and ran to help people. Sometimes even in neighboring villages were invited, because the rumors about the clever doctor, for once working in the village, quickly spread around. And Tiffany liked it at home. Even the air was her own, special, native air. She didn't regret leaving the city. She also found a job to her liking at last, and it turned out that the woman could cut hair very well, though she had never learned to do it. First, she cut Ethan's hair, then Uncle Fred's. Then she freshened up her own hair, and soon neighbors were coming to her house because she was cheap, more for pleasure and experience. The kids were growing up and merrily a gookle, smiling and stretching their arms, recognizing Ethan, and babbling to him in their own way. Aunt Linda brought fresh goat's milk every morning, and the babies grew wonderfully well on it and didn't get sick. Tiffany tried to be an exemplary hostess and watched over the children, and they were calm and occupied each other after all, three not one, and kept the house clean, and tried to Ethan always cook a hot dinner, to please something delicious, homemade. Even though they did not live richly, but they lived in friendship, with peace and love in their hearts. 6 months passed. One cold winter evening the whole family was having dinner. Ethan had come from work, and was happily tucking into the stove. The wood was crackling merrily. The house was warm and cozy. Suddenly there was a knock at the window. Ethan got up unhappily, just warmed up from the cold, and again had to go outside. But Tiffany shouted to him, "You go ahead and eat. I'll open it myself." Uncle Fred must have brought the shovel I asked him to bring. The woman threw on her coat, put on her boots, and went to open the door. It was such a snowstorm, you couldn't see a thing. She opened the door and gasped. On the threshold stood, curled up from the cold, Sean. He mumbled indistinctly, "What a mess you've gotten yourself into, Tiffany. I could barely find you. Let me in the house, we need to talk. We can't talk in the cold." The woman was shaking. She wanted to slap the bastard and throw him out the door. And at the same time the echoes of her former love mingled with pity. She let him pass silently into the hall. He shook off the snow from his expensive coat and entered the house. He sniffed at the smell of pastry and soup and drooled. Ethan looked dumbfounded at the uninvited guest. The children, sensing that there was a stranger in the house, began to whimper. Ethan immediately began to entertain and calm them, taking them in his arms and kissing their chubby pink cheeks. They immediately calmed down and quieted down. Tiffany stood with her arms folded across her chest, staring intently at Sean, not offering to sit down, but asking dryly, "Well, tell me, what are you doing here? I can't say I'm glad to see you. Did you have a guilty conscience? I'll never believe it." Sean hadn't expected such a negative reaction. He'd thought Tiffany was going to disappear, die, and immediately throw herself at his neck. She'd be glad he'd come back for her and they'd get back together. But no, there's another man in the house. And that changed everything. So he timidly began, "I'm here to make up, Tiffany. I was a fool to believe those stupid pictures, and I threw you out. Everyone kept saying, 'Good for you. Good for her. That bitch is a slut.' And I believed it. Only before he died a month ago, my father admitted that it was a photo montage, that he and Carl had set it all up. Carl took the business away from me too, so now I'm out of luck. Of course, my father's savings are enough to keep me going for a long time. But you know what I've realized is that all I want is you and our children. No one could ever replace you. You're the only one I love, Tiffany. Come back to me, please." The woman was stunned at such words. She was amazed by Sean's insolence, and inside everything was raging with resentment. "Do you even hear yourself? You threw me in the last month of pregnancy just on the street, knowing that I was carrying 3 children, that I had nowhere to go. You didn't even blink an eye. What kind of love are you talking about? I was saved by this man who happened to be by my side. If it wasn't for him, me and the kids would have died. Do you realize that? Look at him carefully. His name is Ethan. He's not a rich man. He's not a businessman. He's just a paramedic. But that's what a real man looks like. To me, at least. Love, Sean. It's not pretty words. And it's not a bunch of roses you gave me. No, it's not. It's genuine care, human warmth and trust. When you truly love someone, you trust them unconditionally. I don't love you anymore and I don't trust you, do you hear me? I can never forgive you for your betrayal. Go away. This conversation is over." Ethan intervened, his eyes burning and his hands shaking. "So you are Sean? Tiffany's ex-fiancé and the father of her children? What a meeting. What a small world. Don't you recognize him?" "Of course I recognize you. It was your father who took Strometal away from me. I'll always remember your last name. What a family. One profited from the grief and death of people, the other threw away the woman he loved to certain death pregnant. Now I'm not surprised. I can expect anything from you." Sean turned pale and did not know where to keep his eyes. Everything was true, and there was nothing to wing it. He threw one last trump card. "Tiffany, come to your senses. What about our children? Are they going to grow up without a father? Well, don't be so angry. We're practically family. Have you forgotten how good we were together? He wanted to go to the playpen where the quiet girls were sitting, but Tiffany suddenly rushed like a wolf and began to push Sean towards the exit. Don't you dare go near the children, do you understand? What kind of father are you to them? It's been 6 months and you're just coming to your senses? And before that you didn't care about them? Get out. Get out. The kids have the best father. He loves and cares for them, not you. Forget it, you're not a man, you're nothing. You know it. Sean ran out of the house like a scalded man, humiliated and trampled. He remembered how he'd chased Tiffany away, how she'd cried and begged him to come to his senses while he'd screamed in her face. How ashamed he was now. He had lost everything through his own fault, listened to anyone but his own heart. And now what? What's he left with? No business, no family, nothing. And what nice girls, and brown eyes like his, and frowning eyebrows like he did when he was a kid. How could it be? Now they'll call Ethan daddy and love him. What about me? What about me? Is it really the end? The man sat in the car, wrapped his arms around his head and shouted, God, what an asshole I am. That's what I should do. I don't even know my daughter's names, do I? Poor Tiffany. Why am I so blind and deaf? It's like I'm possessed. I trusted my father unconditionally. Carl was whispering in my ear like a serpent about Tiffany. And she's the only one who ever loved me, cared for me so much. I must atone for my sin. I may have lost Tiffany. I may not love her anymore, but I have to do something for my children. Otherwise, there's nothing to live for. After Sean left, Tiffany couldn't stand it and burst into tears. But now they were more like tears of cleansing, and with each tear went away resentment and hatred for Sean. She finally told him everything that she had been holding in herself for so long, and it became much easier. Ethan came over and quietly hugged her gently. Are you sorry you left? Do you still love him? Tell me honestly, please. It is important for me to understand. Who am I for you? A friend? You said such nice, warm words about me to your ex. Do you really think so? Or did you just want to hurt him? I didn't even expect myself to be this jealous. Yes, Tiffany, I am jealous of you. And I hate to think that you might go back to your ex-boyfriend. I mean, you have kids together. So you better tell me right away if that's the case. Don't torture me. Tiffany answered very seriously, looking intently into his eyes. No, Ethan. I said what I think. You are the closest, most beloved person for me, and no one else I do not need. I just got so angry when I saw Sean, when he wanted to approach the children, and bad memories came flooding back, you know. On the one hand, I felt sorry for him. He wasn't always like that. We loved each other a lot. At least I thought we did. But the way he treated me and our babies showed me that I was wrong about him. If Sean really loved me, he would never have left me like that. I don't need his money. It's not what makes me happy. I don't care if we live modestly, so what? I have much more now, a strong and friendly family, and my soul is so good and calm. And very right was his favorite grandfather, when he often repeated, where I was born, there and useful. The man almost cried. He held Tiffany even tighter and whispered, Thank you for accepting me, for believing me, for loving a worthless, beggarly tramp. I promise I'll do my best to make sure that you and my little girls don't need anything. And I want it to be real. Why don't we sign at the village hall, and we'll be real husband and wife? But in the village you can't hide in a bag. As soon as the villagers found out that Tiffany and Ethan applied to the registry office, immediately the whole street said, Why are you young people wedding delayed? We don't do that. It is necessary to celebrate as it should be, to wish happiness to young people. It's such an event, after all. Tiffany was embarrassed and quietly replied, We wouldn't mind, but we don't have much money. We don't have much to celebrate on. We don't have enough for a cafe in the district center. So we decided to just sign. Uncle Fred slapped himself on the knee. Well, have you heard, good people? Found a problem. Why do we need these cafes, restaurants, and pubs? We have our own club in the village. We'll set up tables with benches, and everyone will bring what they have from home and we'll celebrate that way. I'll take the harmonica. Yes, we'll make such a wedding, any restaurant rests. Ethan supported. What, Tiffany, good idea. We need to respect people. And it really is not human somehow. To go out so to go out. The whole village gathered. The club was decorated with balloons and posters. The tables were full of homemade sausages and treats. The children were nursed one by one. The local children were only happy to take care of 3 identical girls at once. And then we danced, sang heartfelt, touching songs, and the soul flew somewhere far away. Not without reason they say that all villagers are a big family. And as in every family there are scandals, gossip, and quarrels. But if someone is in trouble, they rush to help. This is what the village, simple and heartfelt people, and differ from the city, who prioritize only their personal interests. And Tiffany liked home, and her native village, where everything is so simple and understandable, everything from childhood, and fields, and meadows, and a clean river. And there is no lovelier place in the world than home. There, even on the hard sofa, sleep softly. It was here that the woman found her feminine happiness, having failed to find it in a noisy and bustling, so beautiful, but so foreign city. And she was so grateful to fate that everything had turned out this way. The next day, the letter carrier, Pam, knocked on Tiffany's door, waving some papers. "Tiffany, open up. There's a letter for you. It's urgent. Here you go." "Whew, I'm out of breath. Can I have some water?" The woman gestured her into the house, took out a glass of water, and began to read. "Dear Tiffany, you're right. I am a scumbag and a scoundrel, and there is no forgiveness for me, and I deserve it all. That's why I've decided to leave the country far away, abroad. I guess I'm running away from myself, I don't know. I'll try to find my happiness there. I thought for a long time, remembered our relationship, berated myself for cowardice and meanness, and I would very much like to turn back time, again to look into your happy shining eyes with a sparkle and catch your smile, so naive and so sincere. But alas, this is impossible. I also saw the way you looked at that other Ethan, with the same tenderness and love that you once had for me. I sincerely wish you happiness, and I won't get in the way. I won't be a third wheel. As it happens, I stupidly don't even know my daughter's names. And it's terrible. It's a shame for me as their father. I hope Ethan raises them better than I did. I don't want to torture the kids, to make them torn between their own. But so alien father and stepfather who loves them and make them throw from side to side. Nothing good will come of it. But before I say goodbye forever, I want to do something good for my kids. So here's my parting gift to them. There is a safe deposit box in the bank on Boulevard Naya in your name, code 5583. Please accept with wisdom and not with anger what lies there. I beg you for the sake of our little ones. Goodbye once your beloved Sean." And Tiffany cried again, realizing that now at this very moment, Sean was letting her go, and she was letting him go too for good. Henceforth the story of their lives slammed shut forever. Tiffany and Ethan drove into town the next day to the bank and were given the contents of that very safe deposit box. They opened it and gasped. There were 3 gold crosses and a wad of money. And a note, "To my daughters, from a negligent father. Be happy." Ethan whistled and said thoughtfully, "A noble deed. Apparently, after all, awakened a conscience in Sean. It is worthy of respect. We'll put crosses on the little ones after all. Children have the right to know who their father is. We don't need his money. What are we going to do with it?" Tiffany thought about it and answered, "Let's open a savings account in the girls' names. When they grow up, they'll get a present from their father. They'll need it. And you and I can live like this, can't we?" They did so, and with a pure heart they left the bank, on the way to the church, sanctified crosses, prayed for the health of the living, and put candles for the repose of dead loved ones. Tiffany mentally let Sean go, and even wished him happiness, and she, strangely enough, felt better, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her soul. And Ethan prayed frantically to himself that his long-awaited family happiness would not end, because he and Tiffany both deserved it.